rundown. Well, early on the program, we reported on the Argentinian court ruling declaring the death of prosecutor Alberto Nisman in 2015 as a murder, not suicide, and as part of a broader conspiracy, including former President Cristina Kirchner, to cover up Iranian involvement in the bombings of the Israeli embassy and a Jewish center in Buenos Aires during the 1990s. Well, let's now go more in depth on this fascinating story. With us is Professor Gustavo Perednik. He was a close and personal friend of Alberto Nisman, and he's authored 2 books on him, including his most recent, To Die for Argentina.
It's been an open case for so many years. When you heard yesterday the judge saying for the first time in that, I think, 656-page docket that this was a murder, how did you feel having been a close friend?
It's the first time that a judge says it, but it's not the first time that the justice says it, because the prosecutor who's investigating the case already used the word assassination. In any case, it's a relief, because I used it from the outset, the very first moment in which I knew that Alberto was on death. There was no doubt that someone murdered him. But I was interviewed many times on Argentinian TV, and each time I used the word murder, someone would tell me, well, it's not clear it's a murder yet, so you should use his death as a word. Now I can use it freely and no one would correct me.
Gustavo, explain to someone from outside Argentina, we're talking about 2 bombings, dozens of people were killed, and officials, the highest officials in government apparently were covering up, allegedly, Iranian involvement. How does the public in Argentina regard this conspiracy, their attitude toward it? How did they let it remain unsolved for so many years?
There was two stages. The first one was a real cover-up, which was during Menem's government, the previous president of the Peronist party in Argentina. In those days, Menem would try to downplay the involvement of Iran in the bombing because he wanted to keep good relationships with Iran for commercial reasons. But with Cristina Kirchner, there was an escalation, because it was not just a cover-up, it was working together with Iran in order to whitewash the Iranians from the crime. And for that, you need a very sophisticated machine working for Iran. And that is why the judge, Bonadillo, called it treason. She is being now put on trial for treason. That is the main thing that's shocking the Argentinian people. Most of the Argentinians are I would say everyone is following this with a lot of interest, but most of them identify completely. They feel empathy towards Nisman. When he was murdered, the first 1 month afterwards, there was a 400,000 demonstration under rainy Buenos Aires, claiming for justice, and with the famous slogan, "We are all Nisman." But there are still supporters of Kirchner in Argentina. I would say around 15-17% of the country, which are those who benefited from a corrupted general machine. And those people still support her and say that it's a complete lie and this is a political persecution. I would say it's not unanimous, but most of Argentinians would feel empathy towards the case.
You were a close friend of Nisman's, and I assume in communication with him throughout much of his attempts to bring this case to light and to bring those responsible to justice. When was the last time you spoke with him?
The last time I communicated with him was a few hours before his murder. He sent me what he was going to present at the Argentinian Congress. He sent me the 500 pages indictment, a summary of it, and a short summary. So I read these last 10 pages, immediately wrote an article, and it was uploaded, called the Nisman Trilogy, still on internet in English, a few moments before his murder. And I'm waiting for his feedback on this article. What does he think? I don't receive any feedback. Usually he was very quick, fast in answers. And 1 hour later, a student of mine sent me a shocking email saying, I'm flabbergasted, I cannot believe it, but Alberto was found dead.
What was his state of mind in those hours before he was killed when you spoke to him and when he showed you what he had been working on for so long?
Enthusiastic, always thrilled about this case. This changed his life completely. He was a very unknown prosecutor in a suburb.
Fear for his life. It looks like he didn't take enough.
You know, that question was asked. I brought him to Israel in his first visit to Israel. He gave a lecture at the Jerusalem Center of Public Affairs in which I was a translator. Someone asked him and it's important because of how it ends. Someone asked him, "Don't you fear that they're going to kill you?" And his answer was, "No, because I'm protected by the Argentine state." 1 year later, I gave the lecture in the same center about him, and they started with these seconds in which he says, "I am protected by the Argentine state." What happened was exactly that. When the Argentine state decided not to protect him anymore because the president knew that he was investigating her, and that was unacceptable from her point of view, so the logistics of murder immediately happened, and the Iranians could send their agents.
So, Gustavo, if we're talking about Interpol, certainly we're talking about Iran's involvement, which is at the heart of those allegations. How much, from what you know of Nisman's work, and as a friend of his, was the broader international context affecting his investigation and his inability to actually step it forward?
While he was working, he had the limitation of the international scenario because, on the one hand, the American government was very for appeasement with Iran. And in Argentina itself, the government was a partner of Iran. He didn't know this. He didn't know that there was such a conspiracy until he found it out. But it was very difficult for him to work because he didn't get the support. Even if he got to the final truth, it was very difficult to act upon it because Argentina wouldn't go by itself against Iran. And I always think that had he been now with us in the current international scenario where the United States is not longer trying to appease Iran, and the Argentinian democratic government wants very much to bring justice, Alberto would have been the king of justice, would have been able to implement every one of his indictments very fast.
Do you think that Argentina itself has changed since? We know that the former president herself is still part of government.
180 degrees. Whether it has changed or it will change. It has changed completely. Nowadays we have a government which, first of all, is very friendly to Israel. Secondly, immediately said between the 2 or 3 first steps that they were going to take was to solve the Nisman case, to try to bring justice to the family and against the Iranians as well. So therefore, Argentina is changed into a modern country.
Gustavo, those elements, those powerful elements in Argentina that covered up the Iranian involvement, they're still there in the country. We haven't seen parades of people being put in prison. Presumably, those people still have some, perhaps behind the scenes influence.
They're not so powerful anymore. They were extremely powerful, and you're right, they are dangerous, but they're not so powerful. They are far away from power now. Myself, I wouldn't have gone to Argentina had the outcome of the election would be otherwise, and the Kirchner regime would still be there. But now, obviously, these people are very far away. And by the way, they are not hundreds of people in jail, but the main ones are in jail now. They are under arrest. They are the ones included in Nisman's indictment.
In that indictment and in those 10 pages that you read hours before he died, what stood out to you most?
He was it took long for him to understand the degree of this treason. When he heard, for instance, that there were secret agents of Argentina giving to the Iranians his name, his whereabouts, what time he leaves his office, this is treason. You are talking about one agent of Argentina giving information about their prosecutor to the country that bombed twice Buenos Aires. That's why one of the wise sides of the conclusions of Judge Bonadillo was to call the attack of Iran an act of war. This was quite controversial at the beginning. Many people still say there was no act of war, there was a terror attack, but that's not a war. But if you call it act of war, then you can immediately prosecute Cristina and her troop for treason, which is what's happening now.
Incredible then that after all of his work in the years spent on this, that what he found, the scope of it surprised even Alberto Nisman himself.
The word martyr is often overused, but he certainly was a martyr.
And justice is being brought beyond the grave. Now he's putting them in jail as he announced.
All right, Professor Gustavo Perednik, thank you very much for being with us.